Civilizations do not collapse when they lose wealth. They collapse when wealth convinces them they no longer need truth. This is not a story meant to inspire. It is a confession carved into history. A reminder that the most dangerous prisons are built from privilege, and the most convincing lies are the ones we tell ourselves. There lived a man whose fortune sank deeper than the reach of light, sealed beneath the earth, as though even the ground itself was expected to protect what he worshipped. His name was Qarun. He believed knowledge made him deserving, that possession implied permanence, that abundance was evidence of superiority. But wealth has a flaw it never advertises. It amplifies the voice of ego until conscience can no longer be heard. And when the earth finally answered him, it did not speak in words. It spoke in gravity. This is a twisted chapter of history, where gold did not save a man, and silence became the final judge. Watch closely, because this story is not ancient. It repeats wherever wealth replaces wisdom, and arrogance mistakes itself for immortality. Qarun, the man who had everything. There was a man whose name echoed through history not because he built civilizations, nor because he saved lives, but because he accumulated so much wealth that it bent the imagination of those who spoke of him. His name was Qarun. In a world where famine lurked behind every season and survival itself was an act of faith, Qarun lived as though scarcity were a myth invented for lesser men. His riches were not merely counted, they were whispered, gold stacked upon gold, vaults behind vaults, doors so heavy that their keys required teams of strong men to lift, let alone turn. Wealth so excessive it became symbolic, a monument to excess itself. But Qarun's story is not a simple tale of a poor man who struck fortune. That would have made him sympathetic. That would have made his hunger understandable. No, Qarun was never desperate. He was born into a people who knew discipline, revelation, and restraint. He belonged to the community of Prophet Musa, a nation shaped by trials, miracles, and moral law. He had seen the sea split. He had heard the warnings. He knew the language of gratitude. He understood that provision was not proof of greatness, but a test disguised as favor. Qarun was educated in truth, and that made his fall far more deliberate. Because knowledge does not always humble the heart. Sometimes it sharpens arrogance. And wealth, when it multiplies faster than wisdom, does something dangerous. It does not elevate the soul. It reveals it. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, something inside Qarun shifted. Gratitude gave way to entitlement. Blessings began to feel earned, not bestowed. What was once received with humility was now worn like armor. He stopped seeing his wealth as a trust and began seeing it as evidence. Evidence that he was exceptional. Evidence that he was untouchable. Evidence that he stood above the laws that governed ordinary men. And here lies the first fracture in the human soul. Because the moment a man believes his success is proof of his righteousness, he stops listening. The moment he credits himself for what was never truly his, he begins to rewrite reality. And when a man rewrites reality long enough, he forgets that gravity still applies to him. Qarun had everything, but what he was losing, silently, was the one thing wealth cannot purchase: the ability to recognize his own fragility. And the tragedy had only just begun. Chapter 2. When blessings become a test. At first, Qarun's success was admired. People spoke his name with wonder. Some with reshape, others with envy. They asked him how he acquired such wealth. And Qarun answered not with gratitude but with pride. I was given this wealth because of my own knowledge. Not God. Not destiny. Not divine favor. Himself. This was the moment the blessing transformed into a test. The righteous among his people warned him gently, "Do not exult. Do not forget your share of the hereafter. Do good as God has done good to you, and do not seek corruption on the earth." But Qarun did not listen, because arrogance has a way of deafening the heart. When wealth convinces a man that he is self-made, it quietly replaces humility with entitlement. And entitlement is the seed of destruction. Chapter 3. The Cave of Gold. Qarun did not merely store his wealth. Deep beneath the earth, he built a cave, some say a vast underground treasury where gold was sealed away from human reach. Not for charity, not for legacy, but for control. Gold bars stacked like stone walls, jewels locked behind iron gates, treasures untouched by generosity. It was not enough to be rich. He needed to feel untouchable. And so he paraded his wealth before the people. His garments shimmered. His presence commanded silence. His footsteps announced power. Those who loved the world whispered, "If only we had what Qarun has." Truly, he is a man of great fortune. But those who understood reality responded, "Woe, told you. The reward of God is better for those who believe." The divide was clear. One group admired the glitter. The other feared the cost. Chapter 4. When the earth was commanded. Then came the moment history never forgot. Not announced by thunder. Not preceded by war. Not delayed by debate. There was no warning, because warnings had already been given. Unknowed. God did not raise an army. He did not send angels with swords. He did not summon fire from the sky. He spoke to the most obedient servant of all, the earth's. And the earth listened. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The ground beneath Qarun trembled like a nervous breath. A subtle shift, easy to dismiss. A crack mistaken for coincidence. A vibration blamed on time. But arrogance is always blind in its final moments. Then the soil began to loosen. Stone separated from stone. Foundations that had supported empires forgot their duty. The same ground Qarun trusted to protect his wealth was now being reassigned. His palace leaned, not in collapse, but in surrender. Columns snapped, walls folded inward, vaults designed to outlast generations cracked open like brittle shells. And gold, that symbol of permanence, that illusion of security, slid helplessly into darkness. The earth did not explode. It opened, like a mouth, like a verdict finally spoken. Qarun screamed, but the ground does not negotiate. He reached for servants, but loyalty cannot defy gravity. He reached for his wealth, but wealth has never reached back. No gods could stop it. No riches could ransom him. No influence could delay what had already been decreed. He was pulled downward, slow enough to understand, fast enough to be powerless, along with his palace, along with his treasure, along with the identity he mistook for immortality. Every coin he counted, every title he trusted, every illusion he worshipped, dragged into the same grave. In moments, a lifetime of accumulation vanished. Not stolen, not destroyed, reclaimed. And when the earth finally closed its mouth, there was no monument left to mourn him, no ruins to study, no legacy to debate, only silence. The kind of silence arrogance leaves behind when it realizes too late. that even the ground beneath it was never owned. Chapter 5. The Aftermath of Arrogance. The people stood frozen. The same voices that once envied Qarun now trembled. They sighed. If God had not been gracious to us, we too would have been swallowed. The illusion shattered. Wealth was no longer impressive. Power was no longer secure. Gold was no longer comforting. They understood a truth that echoes through every generation. Possession does not equal protection. Qarun had no army to save him, no money to buy time, no status to delay judgment. Because when divine justice arrives, it bypasses all human systems and leaves only truth behind. Chapter 6. The warning that still speaks. Qarun's story is not ancient folklore preserved only to entertain the curious. It is not a relic meant to gather dust in history's archives. Islamic held up to every generation that mistakes accumulation for meaning. Because wealth in itself is not evil. Gold has no conscience. Money has no morality. It does not corrupt by force, it reveals by permission. Success is not sinful. Achievement is not condemned. But the moment a man forgets where his rise began, the moment he confuses provision with entitlement, something irreversible begins to erode within him. Qarun did not fall because he was rich. He fell because he allowed riches to rewrite his identity. He stopped seeing wealth as a responsibility and began seeing it as evidence of superiority. And that is the oldest illusion in human history. Because arrogance does not announce itself loudly. It arrives quietly, disguised as confidence, justified as self-made success, defended as I earned this. But accumulation without compassion turns blessings into liabilities. And abundance without accountability becomes a silent weapon, not against others first, but against the soul that carries it. Today, Qarun's cave of gold exists no more. No vault remains. No treasure endures. The earth swallowed the wealth, and history swallowed the man. Yet the warning survives. Every generation produces its Qaruns. Every era is tested not by poverty but by excess, by how much power can be held without humility, by how much comfort can be enjoyed without conscience. Empires rise, markets boom, fortunes are made overnight, and somewhere within each success story, the same ancient question whispers, will this wealth refine you or expose you? Because the true collapse is rarely sudden. It begins the moment wealth stops being a tool and starts becoming an identity. So the question is not how much you have, not how high you climb, not how loudly the world applauds your success. The question is far more unsettling. What does your wealth do to your soul? Because when the earth opens, when illusions fail, when titles, accounts, and legacies are stripped away, only one thing remains standing: humility. And that truth is Jew speaks. And so the earth closed, not in fury, not in mercy, but with balance. Qarun disappeared beneath the weight of what he worshipped, and history turned the page without hesitation. Because time does not mourn arrogance. It documents it, then waits for the pattern to repeat. This was never a warning against wealth. It was a warning against forgetting truth, against confusing possession with permanence, against mistaking privilege for protection. Every generation believes it is different. Mori adver, more enlightened, mori securi, And yet the same collapse returns, wearing new titles, new numbers, new gods. So, listen closely. If success replaces humility, if abundance silences conscience, if comfort convinces you that consequence no longer applies, then this chapter is not finished. It is rewriting itself through you. Because this was never just Qarun's story. It is humanity's recurring error. This is not history. This is twisted chapter. And some chapters don't end when the page turns. They end when the ground does.